we'll run this appointment just like we would normally do. Obviously, depending on how you get these appointments is going to depend on how you approach the appointment, right? I think it's really important. I was trying to get one of our ops people to print it out, and I'll disperse it to everybody, but we have what we call a seller counseling interview worksheet. It's like, here it comes right now, 20 or 30 questions, right, that you should be asking prior to a meeting or an appointment so that, thank you, thebomb.com. That's what the old people say. So it looks like this, right? You should be filling out and getting as much information about a client prior to a meeting. That way, number one, if you're not setting that appointment, someone set it for you, you at least have some context of what that appointment is. Number two, you're getting as much deep dive into their situation as possible. What I always recommend is people do business with people that they know, trust, and like. I've lost hundreds of listings, and I mean it, hundreds, because they just didn't feel good, with me, right? Like, it had nothing to do with how many homes you sold, how much money you put in marketing. I can tell you every listing that I've lost was to someone that was not as experienced as me. And the reason was I just blew through that appointment, just like you asked me to do, just blew right through the appointment and wasn't connected to them deeply, right? So I think it's really important. The actual appointment itself is super important. What's even more important is how long you keep them on the phone before you even get to that appointment. And the more information you get before you get there, the higher the probability you will take that listing. I think I've gone on over, I would say, 6,000 appointments in 12 years now. And the most important part of the appointment, would you agree, is how much information you get and how connected you are on the phone before you ever get there. Because if you walk in and you're unconnected and blind, and you're trying to build that rapport up at the actual appointment, it's a hard uphill battle. It's just weird. It's probably gonna feel like this today. We're it's very awkward. So the very first tips I'll give you, we'll start from the very beginning, right? Call, same day of the appointment. I'll usually call, if it's a week out, I'll call every 2 days to confirm and try to push that meeting up. So if you set it a week out, you're trying to push it up, the next, call them the next day, hey, I'm just confirming nothing changed. I have some time on Wednesday, right? You're just trying to get in front of them sooner. I don't know if you saw Ryan's post, but we saw the lowest number of listings ever in history, including sales last year, right? So there's a lot of competition. And don't get it, no matter what, if someone referred you a client, a buyer or seller, someone's trying to steal that client from you, right? So I always try to push it up. The day of the appointment, I would always call to confirm, right? Last year and the year before, we would just not show up if they didn't confirm. This year, I was talking to Nick, I'm I don't care, we're knocking on doors. If they don't confirm, you go, right? It's the kind of market where you gotta fight. But you want to make sure that you're confirming the appointment. I would always recommend getting there 15 minutes early. If you're right on time or a little late, it starts that relationship on a bad footing, right? I look at everyone as having a negative connotation to real estate agents anyways. So, showing up late to someone who already has a negative connotation is a great way to have to dig yourself out of a hole. This recommendation of when you knock on the door, taking a step back, or ringing the doorbell, taking a step back, I think it came from Diana Kokoska. So, if Nick was the guy I'm meeting, I would ensure that I got there 10 minutes early. I'd ring the doorbell. I would step back so I'm not towering right over him like, a weirdo. It could be a female on her own, or they might even have a dog. I've been bit on appointments before. So, their dog can bolt out the door and think that you're an intruder, right? Take a step back. All these little things matter a lot, right? You're setting the tempo for how the appointment should go. So knock on the door, I'm on time. Hey, Nick, great to see you. I told you I'd be here at 10, it's 9:50. Is it okay that we start a little bit early? Yep, cool. Yeah, no one says no, right? But you want to make sure that you're reminding him, and I say this about calls all the time. I know I'm kind of stopping here, but I want to set the tone real quick. You want to remind them in little ways that you can be counted on. right? Like before I ever met Nick, I probably talked to him for like 7 months trying to work on getting the appointment. And every time I stopped, every time we had a call and I set up my next call with him, like, oh, hey, I'll follow up in spring, right? I'll remind him every time I call with, oh, hey, I told you I'd call in spring. It's spring. Here I am. It's Steve calling you again, right? You're just like laying the groundwork for doing what you said you're going to do, right? So Nick, I got here 10 minutes early. It's cool. That's okay, right? Okay, that works. So we'll skip the part of the walkthrough is really important. So the very first thing I would do is, hey, Nick, is it okay if I take a look around the house? You can walk me around the house, show me anything that's been updated or anything that's important to you. Yep, absolutely. Okay, this time is really important. Okay, and we'll get into the appointment, I promise. This time is the most important time outside of the phone call ahead. This is where you're building rapport with them, and then you're also kind of gauging like what his personality type is, right? Like tell me what normally sellers tell you. Like, oh, my floors are like, cold.
Yeah, we just updated everything 10 years ago. New flooring throughout, new pictures, yeah. All that nice. Yeah, nice skylight up here as well.
How much was that skylight?
I don't remember. It was a while ago.
So in his mind, he's like, my house is super updated, and it looks like Pinterest, right? Every seller is kind of the same way. They will walk, as you walk through the house with them, and I've tried this a couple different ways. I've tried to cut my time down by not bringing them with me and say, hey, I'm going to walk the house as if I'm a buyer. I'm not going to bring you with me. You're just going to slow me down, right? I went back to doing the walkthrough with the seller themselves because it's a great way to build rapport. Like you're not sitting down at the table like, now we're ready to talk business, right? It's a great way to just talk to them and get to know them. They'll walk into their kid's old bedroom, right, and say, oh, this is where my daughter grew up, blah, 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 right? So it's a great way to get ammo for when you are sitting at the table. You're going to need to refer back to it when you start to get into, like, say, commission negotiations, pricing negotiations, or competition negotiations, like they're not ready to make a decision yet, right? Makes sense? That walkthrough should take 5 minutes to 20 minutes, right? I've had them take an hour. I would say don't try to place variables on yourself that you should finish a listing appointment in a certain period of time. It'd be great if they're all 30 minutes to an hour, but I've notoriously, my listing appointments probably average an hour and a half. I am of the mindset, the longer you're there with someone, the better off you are, right? They would not want to be sitting with a real estate agent for 2 hours if they didn't like you, right? I promise you, they would kick you out if they didn't like you, right? Okay, so we toured the house. Nick, your house is awesome. Thanks. I particularly like the skylight. So let's just run through this again. I just want to make sure I'm super clear. Tell me why you guys want to move again. Let's just make sure. I know you said you want to move to Texas, but I just want to make sure nothing has changed.
Yeah, so we're moving out to Texas. We've been thinking about it for a while. We have some family that's out there. We just figured it was time to make the move right now.
Got it. And have you looked at homes there yet? Are you, voyeuristically kind of figured out where you want to go yet?
Yeah, we'll browse every now and then, but we haven't gone to see anything yet. We have a trip coming up in about a month, and we'll be out there, and we're hoping we're going to be able to go see some stuff at that point.
So let me ask you, like in regards to moving to Texas and all of that, like if you could wave a magic wand and you could get keys to your new place, like when do you want to be moved by? Are there any specific dates that you have to hit? Like, if you could make this a perfect move for you, when would you want to move in?
Yeah, so my kids are out of school in May, and we're hoping to have that figured out right around then, and we're ready to go during the summer so that we can get them set up for school next year.
Got it. So if we could build this perfect way, you would be moving into your new home over summer after May when the kids are out of school.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely. Got it. So you can get them into the new school, settled in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you done research on schools? Notice this, I would be super focused on the where we're going, right? Because like ultimately you want to know the why. The why is all that matters at that point. If you ever met a seller that's going to go buy another house, they've already kind of disconnected from their current home. And once they're excited about their next home, that's when the magic happens, and they price it at whatever you need to price it at. They'll make price reductions. Whatever needs to happen to sell is, is when they're excited about the other side. So have you ever thought about how you're gonna buy you're gonna buy a new home in Texas, you're gonna rent? Have you decided that part yet?
Yeah, we would like to buy something right away when we're out there. So that would be the plan as of right now.
Got it. We have some great ideas and ways to do that. Have you explored how to make that happen? Like, I'm sure you've heard the horror stories about contingencies and that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, we've heard a ton about that, so that's our biggest concern, is just how do we set that timing up perfectly. We do have some family we can move in with if we needed to, but I'd just rather not do that, so.
that sounds fun, right? Yeah, like the Brady Bunch, you know? So the goal would be simultaneously sell and buy, that way you're not having to move in with your family at first. That kind of thing. Do you guys have any additional funds set aside where you could potentially like buy your next house first, or have you explored that? Do you think you can get financing without selling your current home?
No, I think we do need to sell the current house in order to get the money for the next one. I have some money saved up, but we're mostly gonna be using that for moving and all of that.
Got it. Yeah, because it could be expensive. That's one of the things we'll go over is like how much does it cost to move and good recommendations for you there. What concerns do you have about the whole process, right? Like what keeps you up at night when you're thinking about moving?
I think it's just figuring out, how do we sell this house without knowing exactly where we're gonna land on the other end? And then, vice versa, how do we buy something out that way as well? So really the timing is my big concern.
Yeah, that's my concern too, knowing where you're gonna go. It's like the hardest part, right? But you're gonna be excited though when your taxes go down when you go to Texas.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Big time, I'm real excited.
You can say that to someone that's moving to Texas.
Right.
You know why, right? And we'll just pause this real quick. Again, that is the most important part of an appointment, right? Like the, contingencies and commission and price matter, but like they need to know that you align with them in how they think, how they act, how they feel, their politics, right? Like they work with people who they like that are like them, right? Like you need to be able to mold and have fun and get them to laugh and then also like get them to trust you. They need to know that your mission aligns with their mission. And if for some reason it's not aligned, you won't get that job, right? So Nick, can you confirm for me like what your current mortgage balance is? What you owe on the property, so right now what your payment is?
We owe right around $185,000 on the house.
Got it. So you guys got a nice chunk of equity. Yeah, so it'd be pretty good. Okay. Would you prefer, thinking about the different ways to sell and buy at the same time? Obviously it would be nice if you could move into your new home first and then you can sell your old home, like so your kids aren't home and all that. Are you guys, if you could do it that way, would you be interested in making that happen? Like if you could pick out your next house first?
Yeah, that would definitely be the best case scenario for us.
Got it. Because there are definitely some ways to do that. Obviously, you will have to qualify and make sure that we can make that happen, but there's definitely ways to do that. Are there any other decision makers that, that with you that need to decide on how we're going to do this?
Nope, just me.
Got it. Single dad.
Yep.
He is now.
Yeah, cool, man. I commend you. Yeah, I have 2 little girls, and I couldn't imagine doing that on my own. So, any other important things that I need to know about the house? Updates, improvements recently, anything that's broken?
Nothing that I know of that's broken. Everything's been working just fine for me.
Got it. How did your experience go when you bought this home? Was it a pleasurable experience? Was it great when you bought the home?
Yeah, it was fine. Don't remember much about it, but everything seemed to go pretty smoothly. Good. Been happy ever since.
Yeah, it's like 50-50. I hear some people saying, oh man, it was horrible, and half of them say it was great. Our goal is make it a memorable, pleasurable experience for you, where you say automatically it was just awesome. All right. So can I ask if you're interviewing any other agents or companies, to help you with this?
Yes, I've got a few, about 4 other people.
That's a question to ask before you get there too. On the phone, on the questionnaire, right? You should always ask. You should just assume you're always competing. And when they tell you yes, you should absolutely push to try to get that name. Like get the names. Like you never badmouth anybody, but you should absolutely know who you're competing against and leverage that to your advantage. Okay.
Steve, if you had that on the pre-form, right, the conversation form, would you still be asked that question again if you know?
I would reconfirm because they lied. Yeah.
Could change, things could change.
Yeah, all the stuff that I'm asking him right now, I should have probably already asked all those questions beforehand. You're just reconfirming everything and going probably a couple layers deeper. Like where you're looking to move to, like when you want to be there, right? All that stuff and kind of planting the seeds, like, especially with being able to leverage HELOCs and buy before you sell, that kind of thing. Kind of planting seeds that, hey, I have this solution, this key for you that you don't know about yet, but when I show you how it works, you're going to be like hook, line, and sinker. It's going to be exciting for him, right? So you're just reconfirming everything because honestly, depending on how you get this lead and how long you've been in communication with that lead, they might not be forthright with you on the phone until you get in front of them, right? So like on the phone, that's one stage of the relationship. That's kind of like you're courting someone. At the table, now it's like, okay, we're just about to start dating, right? And they start to be a little bit more forthright. And then once once you seal the deal in your relationship, that's when they get crazy, right? And they start telling you all the, skeletons in the closet. You're like, why didn't you tell me this while we were dating, man? I would never have dated you. So kind of like that, yeah. So just reconfirming all those figures, making sure that you're going deep on that stuff. One more thing I want to ask you, what qualities are you looking for in a real estate agent? Some people don't know how to answer that question, so I'd ask, in a way, if you're going to hire any business, right? What are you looking for in that business or person to do for you?
I think most important two things. I want someone who definitely communicates with us. It's a big move for me. So I want to make sure that everything goes as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
And then definitely somebody who knows the market, what's going on with it, and how they can market my house as well as something that's really important.
Got it. And I hear you there. Like, I feel like as agents, like we're essentially paid to communicate. So that should be a given for all real estate agents, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Like 90% dissatisfaction in the communication of generally agents in general. So I can assure you and make sure that we communicate effectively. And hopefully I've proved that so far over the 7 months we talked to each other. Again, going back to the past, reminding him again, like, hey, dude, I told you I'd call you like 87 times, and I did, right? And so all those little things add up. But you can still lose deals, even though you followed up with them for 2 years. I've lost many of them that way, right? Because we didn't connect at the table, okay? And then one last thing I'll touch on usually is, have you thought about, what you want to sell the house for? I'm sure you have some kind of price in mind. Just curious, like what you think the house is worth.
I haven't really looked lately. I know something I was looking at the other day that it was worth right around 600,000. So yeah, that's the price I was hoping for.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like Zillow says it's worth $595. So that sounds about right to you.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay, just a little aside. A lot of people won't answer that question ever. They don't want to. Well, that's why you're here. Or, why don't you tell me right then and there? And so a good way to deflect that is just to say, well, Zillow says 610, right? What do you think? And usually it's like, oh no, that's way low, right? So it's a good way to deflect from having to address the pricing conversation right then and there. Well, great. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I really appreciate it. I want to go into and kind of share with you. You had mentioned you want someone who knows the market, and I really feel, after 12 years and thousands of sales, I feel like I'm a good expert on what's going on in the neighborhood. So usually I like to start with and share with, what the market's doing in the neighborhood. That way we can start to plan the other end. Does that sound good? Perfect. That works. One other thing I thought of is, have you explored, obviously because interest rates are pretty high right now, right? What is your current interest rate on your home?
I've got a 3.2 right now.
Got it. So just another aside, this is the, I should have addressed, the reason I asked that question is I should have addressed it earlier, and I usually would on an appointment right now. That's something you need to ask like on the phone. That simple question is going to tell you if someone can move or not right now. And most of the time they can't, right? Like meaning they're unwilling to jump with how expensive it is right now, given the current interest rates going from a 3 to a 6 or 3 to a 7.5, right? So I just wanted to ask that to make sure that they do that on an appointment, because that might be able to save you some time. right? I've gone on like 50 appointments in the last year that could have sold, that won't because interest rates are high. So I always start with, going over like the tax rules of the house to make sure everything's accurate, right? So the tax rules say your house is a 3-bedroom, two bathroom. I notice you have a half bathroom, so the government screwed that up. Like we can agree that the government's not good at doing that part, right? So it's missing the half bath, because he's moving to Texas, right? So I know.
Yeah.
You can tell we advertise on conservative talk radio. So the MLS, data or tax data says it's 1,700 square feet. Is that accurate? Do you feel like that's accurate?
Seems about right.
No additions you've done that you didn't report to the government? Okay. 4,000 square foot lot, that looks okay? Yeah, got it. And you paid like $260, that's a great deal.
It is. Really
Yeah.
good.
Do you feel like you're gonna put all of your equity down on the new home? Is that the goal, or do you have a separate plan? Like,
We're hoping to, if I can buy with cash out there, great, but we're not sure yet.
like you don't have specific bills and stuff that you need
No.
to like buy a new car?
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Nothing like that.
I ask that because sometimes I've been surprised, out of left field, like, oh, I need $60,000 to, pay off a student loan, and it just skews everything, right?
Yeah.
Again, remember, we're trying to help you get from here to there as quickly as possible. Okay, so the market over the last 12 months has been honestly quite good. Like you might hear from the news and think that because of high interest rates, it's been a horrible real estate market. It's only been horrible for real estate agents, the one that sells homes, because there hasn't been a lot of home selling, right? But for you as a homeowner, it's actually been quite good, and prices have been really stable this year. So this is a chart. I always pull the trend graphics, old school, print them out. I do this presentation on an iPad usually. So just giving you guys a heads up, I'll do it on an iPad. It's the same exact thing, just on an iPad, and you just kind of flip through the pages, and I'll leave a printed old school hard copy every time I go, right? I want them to have my stuff. But I will print the trend graphics just like this for the zip code. The parameters around that is just the zip code in general. And then going to the trend graphics for, what is it? It's the active pending sold over 12 months, average price per square foot over 12 months, time on market, and then average list to sale, okay? It's just the standard report that you click all the little boxes and you print it out. I just want you guys to know what I'm sharing with them. And I'll give you some context to that as to why we do that. So this is all the sales over the last year. And as you can see, the light green are active homes on the market. So that's like every home that's listed in that month. This little red line are the pending sales. So that shows you demand, right? The number of homes going under contract. And then the red or the dark green are properties that closed in that month. The important thing to you and me is how many homes are listed, so the light green versus the red line, which is demand, right? So as you can see, like for the whole year, there's been plenty of demand. Like every home that's listing is currently going pending. Now, it doesn't mean that every home sells, right? Because you still see some homes sitting on the market 90 days later, right? So there are homes that don't sell, and the only way that happens is either they're not marketed properly or they're priced incorrectly. So it's really important. The market's very sensitive to pricing right now, obviously, because interest rates are 7.5%, right? So an extra like $30,000, $50,000 costs a couple $100s a month for the buyer, right? So in November, which is last month, we saw 28 homes come on the market, 19 went pending, and 18 closed. That is pretty incredible, right? Yeah. And based on the news, you would never think like we're in a seller's market, but I've been doing this long enough where, 3-5 years ago, there was 3 times as many homes available as pending properties, right? So it took 90 days to sell a home, so you're in luck, right? Okay. The average price per square foot, a lot of people think that they can just take, one sale, the average price per square foot, and multiply that, and now you have your property value, but that's not really accurate. So it's a good way to come up with a good, general rule of thumb of how much a house is worth. But in November, the average price per square foot was like $305. But in October, it was $340 a square foot. So it just depends on how big the homes are selling that month versus, the prices that actually sold, right? But I just want to make sure, one quick aside here, guys, is some people, like a lot of people, like glaze over when you start going into this data stuff. Like I love it, like Nick might love it, but generally most people don't. And you can see and sense usually like about halfway through or right at the beginning, like if they're listening to you actively or they're just like, yeah, okay, just give me the price, or it's just going over their head, right? They don't care. Usually I'll remind them, hey, Nick, this is super important. It might be kind of boring, but you said you wanted an expert, right? This is super important because this helps us make an informed decision on where to price your home and make sure it's priced well. And the only way we can do that is look at like previous data to kind of guide us in the direction of what it should sell for, right? You just want to remind them, you'll see them start to like kind of like go astray, let's call it. You want to remind them why it's important that we're doing this, right? Because they might feel like you're not, like they don't care, you're not listening, this is not important, right? But you need to remind them it is important, right? This is important stuff. The average home last month listed for around 600,000. The average home last month sold for 525,000. You might ask, wow, how is every house selling, but then, you know, they're selling so far under their asking price? Even though it's a seller's market, you know, a lot of sellers and agents get pricing wrong, right? So there's still a lot of room in the marketplace to price homes wrong. Buyers are typically closing below what homes actually were listed for. In fact, like 60% of homes are selling with multiple offers, meaning like buyers will come in and offer, you know, 2, 3 offers. That means 40% aren't, right? So, you know, just keep that in mind. We want to be one of that 60%, right? Because usually if we get more than one offer, we can boost the price up and get the best price, especially with your whole situation. Like, remember this, like, it's not about just price, right? You told me your number one goal was getting to where you want to go smoothly, right? Would you sacrifice, most people would say, I want the most money, but wouldn't you sacrifice having a perfect move and getting where you want to go and getting the house that you want and just getting a decent price versus like the very tip-top best price, but it explodes your move on the other end and you don't get what you want, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I would definitely like the most money for it as well.
Every seller says that. Yeah. Me too, right? But if you can't buy another home on the other end, like, and you sell your home and you're homeless in Texas, that doesn't work either, right? So it needs to be, it has to be a win-win-win all the way around, right? It's super duper important. And hopefully with like our trade-in program, you won't have to even worry about that, but we'll go over that later. So after we go over like the, I call it the macro view, everything that's happening in the entire zip code. Now we get into like what's going on in your neighborhood. Because I know you don't really care about what happens in all of Roseville. All you care about is what happens around your house, right? And so usually I'll go into like just a general, 3-line CMA report, nothing super fancy. I will just put it all on one page so it's easy for them to understand, right? And I do as much research as I can before the appointment. This is super important, especially if you're newer. This is where you win the listing if they like you, right? This is where you prove you know your stuff. And Nick knows everything about every home in his neighborhood. I don't, right? So if you're not coming armed with the house that sold 7 months ago, that's twice the size of his home, that sold for 1.1 million, and you don't know that because all you're looking at is the homes that are exactly like his, you look like a real idiot when he brings that up. Well, what about the home with the pool? And you need to know every house that's sold in the neighborhood in case Nick, gets smart and starts to say, well, what about that home over there that's bigger and better and fancier, right? You want to know all of them and then shrink it down to everything that looks like Nick's home, right? So generally, most of the homes, just like you thought, are selling, between $575 and $650, right? Depending if you have a pool or updates. So based on the information that we went over today, what would you pay for your home if you were buying it today?
That's a good question. It definitely looks here that things are selling right in that price range, so, probably right around the 6 to 615 is what I'm thinking.
I mean, I'd probably pay that much for it too. Like, what I would recommend is, and at this point, before I ever go into, anything about us, I will have the pricing discussion right then and there, right? Meaning, I would price it at $590. What do you think about that?
Seems a little low.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So-
Yeah.
Okay, so should we, I don't want to have to take $590 if somebody offered that, so I mean, wouldn't it be best if we started, maybe a little high, we have some room to negotiate down?
That would be a smart move if it worked that way, usually, right? But ultimately, we have a range of value, right? We never know, and keep in mind, we don't know when we're gonna list your home, okay? So we'll always fine tune this a month from now, 2 months from now, when we actually get there, right? And I don't wanna lie to you here. I'll let the other 3 people you're gonna interview do that, right? Like, be very careful around this.
Oh, Steve.
You have to. Because it's true. It's true. You go on as many appointments as I have, it's totally true most of the time. I'm sorry to inform you. But, ultimately, my goal here, the most important thing I can do for you as an owner is suggest to you the right price. But if anyone walks in here and says that they know the exact price this house is going to sell for, they're lying to you, right? So we'll always use a range. And so I think the range is $590 to $615, $620, right? If we get the timing perfect and we get the price perfect and the condition is perfect, I think that we're going to hit the higher end of that range, if not even more, right? So that's my job for you, is to make sure that, number one, we price it right, but more importantly, we get it ready, right, in the best fashion so we can net the highest price, right? Okay. So my gut tells me the best list price, because that's all it is, the listing price. You can say no to any offer, right? I think the best listing price to get the highest price is probably $590, that's my guess. But, ultimately, you're the boss. If you came back and said, Steve, I'm gonna list for $675, I definitely would not work with you over that, right? Okay. So, I want to make sure that this house sells for you. And remember, we're not just selling this home, we're achieving the whole goal of moving to your next house and all of that.
Okay, so if we, with that being said, when would you say is the best time? We don't want to move until the kids are out of school around May or so. So, should we wait until later in the summer to put the house up to maybe get more for it?
Well, we never know if you're going to get more in the future, right? Like, I can honestly say, the people who we waited, like in 2020, what year are we in? 2022, and we waited until January instead of selling in October. Well, that cost them like $30,000, right? We never foresaw that. We didn't know interest rates were going to go up, right? We had no idea, right? All it takes is a little increase in inventory today to change the market pretty dramatically. And we watched that happen. I can show you what 2022 looked like as inventory increased and as price reductions started to happen. It happens like fast, right? So we obviously don't want to list it too soon, right? Because then you'd be homeless and that's not good, right? So ultimately we don't want that to happen. So I would say we would get the paperwork started, we would start pre-marketing the home, and we start getting it ready for you. And I would probably try to get it up for sure before March, right? Like, because ultimately, if you get into March, April, May, that's when everyone else is starting to list the home, right? So we're gonna be competing against more property. I could be totally wrong, right? I've been wrong before, right? But I just think that's the best strategy to make sure you move whenever you want. One thing I do want to explain is, like, if we list your house today, you're not moving today, it's not a 30-day process, right? It could take like a week to 3 weeks to get an offer, right? And then it takes another 30 days or so to close, right? So that's a month or 2 months right there, right? If we need additional time, we can get an extra 30 to 60 days to go find your replacement home if you haven't moved yet. So, I would argue that the timeline from start to finish is about 3 to 4 months, right? If you do it the conventional way, right? Okay. So we're on board. You kind of feel 590 to 600 is a pretty good range, as long as we get the maximum price and you feel good about it.
Correct. Yeah, I would like to be above 6. So.
Yeah. I'm sure. We can talk about that later, right? Yeah. You don't want to fight them too hard, right? And then if they're going right to market, I would definitely pin it down, meaning like we're ready to list right now. I would fight hard to get the right price. Like pricing is everything right now. Like if you don't get the right price, it's not going to turn into a sold listing for you. Or worse, it's going to be a dissatisfied client. You're going to have a horrible relationship. It's not going to be fun, right? I'm very protective over dissatisfied clients right now. I'd rather not work with people and keep satisfied clients than work with them and have them dissatisfied, right? I can do that now. If I didn't have any business or any money, I would work with everybody, right? You should be taking listings at will, even if they're a little overpriced right now if you don't have the business. Would you agree? Okay, so I don't know where the packet went, but I can do it off the top of my head. Oh yeah. How much time do we have?
5-ish minutes.
Okay. All right, so we went through your goals, we went through your hopes and aspirations, we talked about price. So far, everything lines up, feels pretty good. Okay. Look, I just want to share a little bit about who we are, what we offer, some of the things that we do that are unique, right? This is the shortest point of our meeting, right? I don't like to talk about us and what we do, but I do think that we can offer you some solutions that will probably help you that most can, or they just don't know about yet, right? So tell you a little bit about ourselves. I've been in business, blah, 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 10 years, go through the whole sales track record. I don't need to repeat it for you guys. 12 years in the business, a couple thousand home sales. This is, I would argue, one really important thing. This will be at the class tomorrow. Not all of you can offer like what I will offer him at the table, right? But I would argue that you need to figure out how you can start to offer a menu of options to someone, or a commission menu, or something, right? You need to be able to offer someone a menu of things. First, all these class action lawsuits that are happening are arguing that we're not giving the consumer any options or explaining how commission works at varying commission rates, right? They're saying we're fixing commission. Number two, I know that the other 4 agents that are coming in won't propose multiple options to them. They're just going to say, this is how you do it, this is how it's done, here's how much it's going to cost, okay? So what makes us unique is that we provide clients, like there's all kinds of ways to sell your home now. I'm sure you've heard of like Open Door and Zillow will buy your house, and both those companies went bankrupt, by the way, so it didn't work out well for them. But you can still get offers on your home, and anytime you are getting an offer on your home, you're usually giving up a big piece of your equity, right? I'm sure you explored it, wanting to move and buy another home. Did you ever go on it and see how much they offered you?
I didn't see how much they offered, but I did look up real quick to see if that would be an option.
Every seller that needs to buy another home is doing that, and if you're not addressing it, even in today's world where Open Door is not like huge, they're checking it out. Like because they're Googling how to buy and sell at the same time, and all those websites are popping up at the same time. So you want to address it and at least ask them if they have an offer or saw an offer from one of those companies. And I would say, great, I can do that for you, right? It's probably not the best option for you, but I can do it for you and bring you that option. Obviously we don't charge a big fee or anything, but we can help facilitate that for you and explain if it's a good deal or not. The important thing for me is I want to show you all of your options and not hide any options available to you. A lot of people won't do that, right? They're not going to share there's all these other options for you. What I think would work really well for you is seeing if you can qualify for, we call it our trade-in program, and some people call it a buy before you sell. Really, it's just like a home equity line of credit that allows you to go buy your other home first, right? Like if I leave this table today, I can have you approved for that program by tomorrow, if not the next day. And literally we could be buying a home in Texas in 2 days and have you moved in 21 days, and I can sell your house and you're gone, right? As crazy as that sounds, like when I asked you the question, if you could wave a magic wand, how would you, make that move? If I could prove to you that that's a viable, like totally safe option, and you don't walk away with any less money, I'm sure you'd wave the wand and say, I want to be moved in 21 days, right? Or right when your kids get out of school, right? Yeah, so ultimately it allows us to wait all the way up until your kids are out, right? even there's some risks when you start talking about contingent moves, right? And even though you're not ready to move right now, I still would recommend we wait all the way up until your kids are out of school to ensure that you get the house that you want in the timeline that you want. Because if you list your house first, there is no guarantee that you're going to get the home you want, right? And there is no guarantee that that you're going to be able to buy the right home at the same time we sell your current home. Like, you're probably going to get a decent one, and we'll find a home that way for sure. Like, there's no doubt. I've done it hundreds of times, but there's a lot greater percentage of people who have done that are disappointed with the house that they got and wish that they would have bought a different home.
Yeah.
They may not sell their house and move again, but they're still a little disappointed. So if I could remove any disappointment and say, hey, you can pick your house and move on your timeline whenever you want, and most importantly, get out of this house, because I do think it should be painted. I think there's some things that you can do to improve the value to make sure it sells above 610, 620, 615. That's the best way, right? Okay. So I would definitely want to go over those options with you and just share, okay, option 1, buying first, here's what I think you can sell it for in the timeline. Option 2, trying to do a contingent sale, here's what I think it could be and how much it could cost. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so you feel like it'd be okay if we move forward and at least explore, let's say, if you qualify for the program and how much it costs. Because it doesn't cost any extra money for us to do that for you.
Okay, yeah, I definitely would like to see it, and I'm not too familiar with it, so.
Got it. Yeah. So that's like a soft close, right? To ask, are you open to exploring, testing, making sure you qualify, right? He feels good. I know he feels good that, we're capable and all of that, right? We break down our, outside of like a program, let's say, we break down our commission packages into packages, basically. Like, I would ask, what did you think it was going to cost to sell a home, commission-wise? Like, how much do you think?
I've heard anywhere from 5 to 7%.
7 sounds good. I don't know that. I mean, the reason, and I've asked that a lot. That's something over the last year I started to add for sure, because you don't want to offer something if they have in their mind already something that is being, if he would have said, oh, I heard it's gonna be 6%, right? I would gravitate towards, great, that's perfect, because our, I would call it our standard package, like we offer staging and cleaning and stuff, is 6%, right? And you can still buy your next house first and use the trade-in program and all of that. If they're commission sensitive, you should have some kind of menu, and you should kind of build it out in a way. It's all things you would do anyways, right? But you're just putting it on paper, right? So like at 6%, I will pay for and include staging and cleaning and home inspection or a pest inspection and roof inspection. I pay for all of it, right? At 5.5, or we changed it to 5, but 5%, we won't include all that stuff, right? All the extra 1% does is pay for the stuff that we're offering. In reality, maybe we net a little bit of money, but I would say most people will choose, 6%, 5%, between that range. If someone's very commission sensitive, we'll go all the way down to like 4.5, right? But we certainly aren't paying for staging, cleaning. We're setting the expectation that we'll do 1 open house a week, or 2 a month, right? Instead of 2 every weekend, every week, right? So we start to water down like what we're willing to do. Okay. And so after you explain all of the, let's call it your value proposition and like what you do in terms of cost, I would go into what you do to market the home. Like, we have a whole bullet point, let's call it 64 things that we do to sell your home. I would hit on that after I kind of figure out what program Nick fits into, right? So Nick, after everything I've gone over today, all the marketing and all the stuff, are you ready to get the ball rolling? I know you still have some interviews, but what I'd like to do is make sure you qualify, for the Buy It For Yourself program. I can do that even if you decide not to work with us. So what I'd like to do is start getting that process going, and you can complete your interviews. By the time you call me back and let me know that you're ready to move forward, I should be able to tell you, okay, here's option 1, here's option 2. So to do that, we can start the paperwork today. I'll write that you can cancel at any time with no fees. Once you complete your interviews, if if you want to move forward with us, great, I have everything I need. If you complete the interviews and say, hey, I found someone better, I'll rip it up and, at least you qualified for the Buy Before You Sell program and I can show you how you can use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would like to wait until I talk to everybody first. I don't want to sign anything just yet. So I'm gonna wait, and then I can, if you want to send me some information about the program, definitely.
Nobody ever wants to sign anything. Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that, right? I can appreciate and understand that, right? So it sounds like to me that there's something today that maybe I didn't explain properly, or is there anything today that I've gone over that maybe you don't understand or feel good about?
Yeah. No, it all seems to make sense. The programs you're talking about seem great as well. I already set up the meetings with everybody, so I want to make sure I give everyone a fair shot.
For sure. Yeah, I always recommend, even if you told me you weren't interviewing people, I'd always recommend talking to 2 or 3, because I think it's just important, and you should see what options are out there. I'm just trying to save you time by getting the ball rolling. I can't list your house without your permission, right? I didn't do this for 12 years and have all these reviews from people by swindling them, right? I'm trying to save you time. Ultimately, if you call me back and say, hey, Steve, I'm ready to go, and I want to get the ball rolling, it's going to take us probably 3 to 5 days to know if you qualified for the Buy Before You Sell program and all of that. So I'm just trying to cut some time out of your day so you don't have to meet us. So again, it's going to stay with me. We're not going to move forward with anything. But I think it's important that I give you, because I really do feel that you're going to look at the numbers and say, man, it just makes sense to see if you could buy before you sell. Ultimately, this is the way we move people now. I haven't completed like a contingent sale in like years, right? Like this is the option. So I just think it'd be good for you, and hopefully I get it before you decide. Like that's my goal, is to show you a path, because I know no one's going to show you this. So I want to show you a path before you're done, making a decision, because I think I can give you something that other people can't or just don't know about yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we can start the paperwork today, and usually you should be closing 3 or 4 times.
Yes.
Right? And I can tell you honestly that if you don't walk out with a signature, even for me, if I walk out without a signature, it's probably 50% of the time I'm not going to get that business, no matter how good the appointment went. Right? Like, how many times have I called and said, how'd that go? You're like, oh man, it was awesome. He just wasn't ready to sign yet because they got a couple months to go, and then 2 months later, it's like, yeah, we see it list on the market, right? It's like, well, what happened, right? It's just something about signing that agreement with someone like bonds them to you, right? And you have to close to get that agreement signed. The hardest ones are this situation that you probably did that on purpose. No, seriously, like I'm not ready to move until summer. I'm just getting my options right now. I have no leverage to say, well, when you make a decision, I can hit the ground running right away because he's not hitting the ground running right away, right? We're not selling right away. So, those are the hardest to get them to see why they need to sign that paperwork right now. Because oftentimes I'll say, well, I'm not even ready yet, man. Why are you pushing on me so hard, right? It's just because I like you, But you have to get creative in the closes, and if you walk out without that agreement signed, you better be on your follow-up. I would be calling him the next day. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. 2 days later, hey, did you finish your interviews? 3 days later, hey, just checking up on your interviews, right? If you have the agents you're competing against, I go to the MLS, print out their stats, send them to them. They should know. The consumer should know what the track record is of the people you're competing against. That's fair game. I feel like it should be available data anyways, but I would say that's going to help you. If you don't have stats, use the office stats, right? Show all the closings KW Roseville office has closed, right? And so I think it's really important. Most of the time is not hey, this is how good I am, and this is what I do, and this is all the marketing we do. If someone says the number one thing and they're a high B and they're I just want to know all the marketing and the Bay Area marketing you do, of course you're going to spend some time on that. But majority of the time, and you can probably concur on this, is just trying to get in rapport and know what's important to him. So I focus on that, right? The way our presentation is really designed is like, if they need to renovate their house or have repairs to make, we go that direction. If they need to buy and sell at the same time, we go this direction. If they just want to sell right now, and they are open to cash offers, you can absolutely do that for them, right? If they're very touchy-feely, they're emotionally attached to their house, you barely bring this thing out and talking about marketing. You're just talking about how can we replicate that for you in your new home, right? So it's important to know who you're talking to, and you have to be able to tailor your presentation to those people, and that's why you should be really thoughtful about what you put in your presentation, because in reality, this is just a framework of how you should do your appointment. That's it, right? Like, it just makes me do the appointment the same way every time. Like, here's our options, here's the market, here's our marketing, let's get the paperwork started, right? And the rest of it is for them to peruse on their own time, find misspelled words and stuff, and that kind of thing. I did get one of my packets sent to me by someone who did sign a listing agreement, and it was just like all highlighted up, and he's like, dude, you spell horribly. So he fixed it for me. I mean, it was embarrassing. I was like,
Did you make the changes?
not yet, because we had a professional printed. So I told him, would you rather me just execute and get S done, or have it perfect? Most people want you to execute.
Let AI revise it.
Yeah, there you go.
Revision
It's never wrong.
002, right? Yeah. So, any questions, or I got a little bit of time.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in your presentation, when you were proposing him that you're gonna do a buy now, sell later, is that you're asking him to sign that listing agreement, so you can go back and get working on that and bring those figures to him so he knows what that whole scenario looks like, right? You're
Yeah,
not
it's
showing
very
him the
rare.
house
I'm just trying to get the listing agreement signed, really, is what I'm trying to do. And find ways to show, like, the only reason someone does not sign the agreement is they don't understand why they need to sign it right now.
But
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like-
so
like
putting that, like, oh, I need to sign so I can go get the figures, we get the ball rolling on that, is a way to get them to understand why it's important.
So you're not overwhelming him with all of that information as well, you're getting him to sign it, so you can go back and get that whole scenario form. And
Yeah,
bring back
I
and meet with them.
don't actively pursue that till they're committed.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. It's a lot of work in it. And then the other question is, if you sign the listing agreement, would you have a conversation with him about you will cancel the remaining listing appointments, or do you let him go?
I've
through
never
with
done
those?
that. Yeah,
Okay.
I've never actually personally canceled those appointments. I know that in some classes they teach you
Yeah.
that, but I've never done that. I've never had anybody too worried about canceling it on their own. Most of the time they complete the interviews, right?
Okay,
Like,
gotcha.
I want them to complete it,
Gotcha.
and they'll come back usually and say like, okay, well, yeah, you're a serious agent, right? Sometimes that backfires, but it is what it is.
No.
Yeah.
And if you have the signed agreement and then they meet with somebody that they're like, ooh, they brought up this, they have to now call you to
Yes,
cancel
to
that
cancel
agreement,
it.
which gives you an opportunity back at the table of,
Right.
we didn't talk about that, let's do that as well.
One of the questions I would ask is, like, I always want to go last if possible, because most people will complete all the interviews. Very rarely will they cancel them all and like say, I very rarely get the call, like, hey, I've signed with someone else, I'm going to cancel with you, right? One of the questions I would ask if you had already interviewed people at the end is say, hey, is there anything I've gone over today that someone else maybe mentioned, I just forgot to mention it today, right? Meaning, what is someone else offering or what they say they would do? And you'll get weird stuff like, well, this agent said they put 37 signs out. And I would say, did you know that only 1% of homes sell from open houses, right? That's why I invest X amount of dollars in real marketing for the 99%. Like, what would you rather have, like 37 open house signs or 99% success rate on selling, right? So, they'll say weird stuff like that, and you say, oh, well, of course we put out a lot of signs for an open house, right? But like, it's weird. Some people think that stuff is important, right? Like, oh, are you going to print flyers that are in my house, right? What kind of paper is on it, right? And it gives you an opportunity to say, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Here's why we don't print flyers out front, because it makes a mess out front, or you can address those things when you ask them, right? And I mean, you'll lose listings if you're not paying attention to that kind of stuff. Like, what you never know what's important to somebody, right? And it's not always just about commission. A lot of times it is, right? It's like, well, they said they'd do it for 4%. And that's when I say, great, what's their name? Show me. Like, and I'll show you their sales track record of why they're offering you that.
Or you show them that you also offer that.
Yeah, I can match it. I get
You have
the
a
option.
4% program as well.
Yeah, I can totally, I mean, I'm not unwilling to match commissions, really, in today's world. Like, we've been pretty good at maintaining decent commission rates, but I will absolutely match it. If that other agent is, you know, comparable and solid and a full-time agent, you know.
Which is why you ask if they're interviewing anybody else, and who they are, so you can do your research before you want to join.
Yes, and it never ceases to amaze me. Like, you know, you'll get people that will, commission or not, you know, not hire you and hire someone with like 3 sales in 24 months, right? Or 0 sales that I can find, and there's no answer to why they chose them over you, right? And what I want to leave with is, no matter your experience level, you can win listings by making sure you're in rapport, and if that person trusts that you can solve their problem, and that's why I'm really big on like the options and been doing that so long, is like, I want to be a problem solver for people and solve real problems, not just post their home to the MLS and charge them a fee. Like, if you can come in and solve real problems for people and like be a solution for them, estate sales, selling stuff, like we sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace for people. I move things. I have movers. Like, we do a lot. I spend thousands of dollars a month on just helping people get shit done, pardon my French, at their house.
Didn't sound like French.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like we take on a burden of costs every month of just like, oh yeah, I'll pay for that. Oh yeah, you need that safe removed. Well, you know, just going above and beyond is people remember that stuff for sure, right? So you need to tell people that, like, hey, I'm willing to do all this extra stuff for you to earn your business. It's that kind of market right now. I mean, let's get it straight. Last year, there was fewer listings than any time in history before, right? So you should do whatever it takes right now to try to get listings.
For sure. So thank you, Steve. Was this worth the time today? I know we've run over, and here's the thing I just want to commend Steve on, because the listing presentation is like a choose your own adventure, right?
You kind of like that.
You guys, does anybody remember those books where it's like you get to this page and it goes, hey, if you want to go in the cave, go to page 24. If you want to go in the boat, go to page 147. But you got to kind of, a listing presentation like that, depending on the needs analysis. So I appreciate where you were going to trying to cover as many bases as possible in the way that you're presenting here, even though it didn't cover all the bases in the presentation itself. So,
I mean, if you try to go into listing appointments like a robot and like just treat it all the same, like, my name's Steve and I've sold X number of homes and I'm with Keller Williams and we're the biggest brokerage and, you know, here's how I market your home. Do you want to do business with me? You know, if you go into it like robotically following your presentation, like verbatim, I think you're going to have trouble, right? Like, you're going to get listings because you're following a plan and a model, and it's going to work sometimes. I'm of the mindset that you should walk in with your presentation, it's the same every single time, but most of the time you need to be asking questions and like kind of revolving your meeting around solving whatever problem Nick has, right? And reminding him how you are the solution to that problem, right? And not robotically following all the marketing steps that you do. What you can't do, though, is wing it, right? Even if Nick said, yeah, I'm ready to, you know, I called you because I knew I wanted to work with you, right? I would not skip doing the presentation with him. I've done that many a times, and it always backfires. Always. You know, you need to go through the pricing. You need to go through what you do for marketing. You need to go through the options with them, like give them all of their options again, right? You need to share with them all of the experiences. You need to do a presentation with them, because if you don't, when it comes to pricing the home, they're gonna want to price it higher than you recommend, because you didn't go over it with them and set the expectation and standard of what it should be, right? When you're actively listed and it's not selling, they're going to ask you, what the hell are you doing to market my home? It's your fault, right? Because you didn't go over the 62-step marketing plan in the beginning. right?
And they will talk to their friend that's in real estate
Always,
too.
always. Oh yeah, homes are selling in 7 days. You know, they're calling their friends and whatnot, right? So don't, like the presentation, I say that carefully, is really important as you're newer. Just follow that presentation, ask the right questions. As you gain experience, the presentation is simply a roadmap of how to do an appointment, right? And a leave behind for the consumer, really. But it's never an excuse to not follow the plan, right? Because when you start winging it and not following the plan, that's when you start to lose listings because you're not hitting the key points of, like, you know, one person might be interested in marketing and you don't hit it, you don't get the listing because someone else behind you said, I do 777 things to market your home, right? You just want to make sure you're hitting every key piece. Got it?
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
So we have upcoming, we have Sherry Walker, Randy Christensen, and Chris Alston that are also gonna do theirs. And then the last week of the month, we're gonna award the prizes on who is listing idle. All right, guys, have a great week. Thank you.